We've just had proof that a few kilometers in a different direction down the desert can make a huge difference. We had an afternoon game where there was a drought of runs. We've had an evening game where 189 was chased down with several balls to spare. Talk about a contrast, but that's why we love this game. That's why we love this tournament. And this is what's happened in match number 47. The team on top of the table, 189 for 4 in 20 overs. The team in second last place made 190 for 3 in 17.3. The guy who got 64 of 42 couldn't find a place in the 11 until today. He's got in there and he's shown exactly what he's capable of. The uncertainties coming to the fore in this game in Abu Dhabi. Rajasthan the winners, and to discuss it all, not just this game, but the doubleheader is...
I can't seem to... I can't seem to hear you, Gautam. I think Gautam has just got so excited by everything that's happening around him that he's totally lost his voice. I think we need to check up about... He was stunned. I think he was already stunned by the fact that he's won his game by a lot of points. He's done really, really well with his fantasy team. But Shaun, absolutely amazing evening. Is that a result you would have predicted after they got 189 runs the way they did?
Yeah, definitely not. It ended off like scintillating Saturday, didn't it? I mean, what an entertainment from the runs perspective it was. They were absolutely brilliant. And DUBE, where's he been? Where's he been? We've seen him in years gone by. You tend to forget who these guys have got in their squad and the damage they've done. But, I mean, that chase was brilliant. What a tone was set by the top two, really dictating terms. And, yeah, that's as good a power play as I can remember seeing for sure, for a long time. They were so far ahead of the game that it was basically fait accompli, and then DUBE came in and added to the momentum, and they win so comfortably. And you think to yourself, how have Rajasthan got themselves into that position in the seat? 5 changes. It was basically a different team on the park, and it looked like a different team. It looked like a team that should have been top of the table. So, yeah, big ups for them. They're not out of the tournament. And if you look at their fixtures still to come, I think they've got Mumbai and Kolkata, which means things are in their hands. You know, you've got the ability to knock 2 of the teams that are based on 10 points as well. So, yeah, big ups to them. You do wonder why it's taken so long, but big ups to them for making those bold decisions and then all of a sudden getting themselves into a position where qualification is not out of the possibilities. I think Gautam's got his voice back. Has he recovered?
I hope I have. Am I with you guys?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome back.
There I am. Here I was in my whole excitement. Did you not hear me at all in the beginning?
We heard a little bit of the start, and then when you started to wax lyrical, you just went, choop, quiet.
I think it was all the big words. They just didn't want it. Anyway, as I was saying, what a finish it was. I heard all of you taking it forward. But yeah, where I probably ended with was saying, where has SHIVAM DUBE been? And I think they took it literally as, where has my voice been? And it's come back. But Shaun, you talked about that as well. But I think on so many fronts, have a look at this response. 64 of 42 deliveries, 4 fours, 4 sixes. I think the brilliant part of this is, 1, of course, that he hasn't been playing. 2, where Rajasthan were placed on the table. And 3, the fact that in a tournament of 140s, we've had 189 chase down.
Yeah, you can sometimes get caught with your pants down in the IPL because someone like a DUBE sits on the sidelines and, you know, you do a lot of analysis about who's to come, where to bowl these particular individuals. And, you know, maybe he hasn't performed as well in the last 3 or 4 games that he's played, whenever that was. But they probably wouldn't have done any analysis on him. They probably wouldn't have come up with any game plans about what his strengths and weaknesses are. And it would have been very much like the old days where you rock up and you say to one of the teammates, remind me about this guy, where's his strengths? And before you know it, he was off and running and just played brilliantly. And you just saw the stats there, strike rate superb, 4s and 6s all round. Just brilliant.
No, absolutely. And the one thing that I want to say is that YASHASVI JAISWAL, when he and Evan Lewis were playing, they didn't have a chance. You know, every 190, it's over, nobody's going to bother. When they were finished, when SHIVAM DUBE actually walks in, and that's a brilliant innings. You know, let's go back and have a look at what YASHASVI did, because he did some incredible things up front. 50 runs of 20. He got them off 19 balls. I think his last 2 balls were dot balls. Got out, unfortunately, to a bowler who would have been much easier than most of the bowling he'd faced that day. But it was just one of those things. But here's my point. Yashasvi plays brilliantly, but he plays without pressure because nobody expects them to get 190. But when they get that start of 70, 80 runs and Shivam Dube walks in, it's not easy, but now they think they have a chance of winning. So there's responsibility. If Yashasvi got out early, people would have said, okay, you know what, it's an impossible target. So Shivam took responsibility and he took the risks because Sanju was not taking the risks on the other side. I think that was the game plan Sangakkara would have discussed. Sanju, play the standard strokes, hit the balls only when you need to. He took the risk and he took on the spinners as well. He hit Jadeja, he hit Moeen Ali, he hit the spinners, he kept that rate going, and that's why, and he was there at the end. These are all important things. He finished the match.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's what it is. It was sort of an innings of 2 parts. You had the impact player at the top and impact player to finish. And that's sort of an ideal world in T20 cricket. Not every team has had it. But I think Rajasthan may have just discovered a formula fairly late, but not too late, Shaun.
Yeah, not too late. You think about Phillips. I mean, he didn't get to the crease and there was still David Miller to come. So there was still plenty of firepower to be shared on its way. But yeah, I think they have stumbled across it. And for me, I wouldn't go very much far away from this for the rest of the tournament. These guys have earned the right. They've waited. They've been patient. They've waited for the opportunity. I mean, given the chance, they've produced. So, yeah, I think also in the performance, what you tend to have to do is match the opposition's performance. So in the first innings, Gatwad's performance at the back end was superb. That last 50 he got in particular was at such a rapid rate. But JAISWAL was the one who matched that. He was the one who got that 50. So all the impetus, all the momentum, all the standing in the game that was accomplished by the back end partnership between Gatwad and Jadeja was taken out of the mix just by Lewis and JAISWAL up front, and I think that was important. And then obviously you have to follow it up, but it's made a lot easier when you know where you're at and you're sort of ahead of the game. So yeah, both just can't say enough about the way those guys played. Maybe it came on a little bit better with the DUBE. Maybe the surface was just a little bit better to be able to hit through the line, but still you have to do it and to win with, what did they win with? Basically like 15 balls to go. Brilliant.
Yeah, that will reflect at some point on the net run rate. But one more person, Joy, to talk about. Evan Lewis was brilliant. Partnership we've talked about with JAISWAL and Dube. But what about Sanju Samson? Didn't score that many runs, but he just showed that you didn't need to probably go from ball 1 because you've had so many runs scored, and you didn't need to go into your shell either. He just came in and languidly kept playing, saying, guys, just keep the momentum going and you can do it.
Absolutely. And if you remember the first 4 that he hit, it was a reverse sweep. I think it was of Moeen Ali. And it was perfectly calculated. Moeen pitching outside the off stump. If he plays the reverse, there's no fielder there. Again, riskless shot. He was not trying to loft it over long on the first ball, which was a kind of shot that he's tried to do in the past. It was a riskless, thought-through shot, given what the field is, given the situation, given the fact that he can't be leg before wicket in a situation like that. He sorted all this out in his head and he's done it. And that's why I'm saying that this is a different Sanju. I mean, there are many players who have not done well with captaincy on their shoulders, even greats like Sachin Tendulkar and Jacques Kallis haven't. But captaincy has certainly suited Sanju Samson. And even the way that he marshaled his troops, given the assault that was played on them, they managed to stand true and come back and win this game. It's a huge one, not just as Sanju Samson the player, but Sanju Samson the captain.
Yeah, well, that's quite something. Captaincy, getting the runs, scoring at the rate, and of course at the end now we will of course see at some point where the points table has taken Rajasthan, because it was not just about the 2 points and taking them to 10, but it was actually about the net run rate as well. Let's have a look at that. Has it gone above Mumbai? Simple answer, yes. That's not good news for Mumbai at all, because now you're talking about a potential 14 points. 2 more wins for Rajasthan, 14 points. 2 more wins for Kolkata, 14 points. What's going to come into the equation? Net run rate. How big? I mean, imagine, you're talking about chasing down 180. The first objective is 2 points. They've achieved 2 objectives, Joy, at one go.
Yeah, they've done superbly for themselves. And again, out of seemingly nowhere. I mean, they were in a situation where you thought it's done. They are facing the top team in the tournament. That top team goes and gets 190. So this last 20 overs, every Mumbai supporter, even a Kolkata supporter, would have looked at these last 20 overs in total disbelief, because so far till then, you have a script. It was all going according to the script. And suddenly somebody tore up the book. Even Lewis and Jaiswal tore up the book and threw it away and said, sorry, new script. Here's what we're going to do now. And that's exactly what happened.
Shaun, how important has this win been from the net run rate perspective and, of course, their confidence?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, obviously to get them closer, even the team in front of them, they're not far off them from a net run rate perspective. And it's a hard one for, like, in the camps, you often want to discuss it. You often want to try and hammer home that advantage when you've got a run chase and you can knock it off, but you don't want to take things for granted and you don't want to touch the money and get your team to try and finish a game in 12 overs so that your net run rate goes into the positives. But how many times have we seen it? It's like the ace up your sleeve in the IPL. Invariably, you have to play it. And if you've got a positive net run rate, it always comes good for you. How many teams, if we could go back over the 14 years and analyze how many times net run rate has got a team into the last 4? It's been a massive amount of occasions, and 14 points. So what's that? Just winning 7 games, winning half your games, and still managing to get into the playoffs. And it's just because when you have won, you've won comfortably, or when you've lost, it's been a very narrow margin. So it is vitally important. And even tonight, I thought they could have gone a little bit harder at one stage. After the 15th over, I was thinking, gee, send a message out, finish this, because even if it's point something a little bit higher, you never know. It could be a matter of life and death as far as whether you stay in or have to go home.
Well, they have climbed over Mumbai, but that's as far as the teams are concerned. There's another battle we've been keeping a close eye on that if you look away for a second, somebody else might grab it. It's been sort of a case of musical chairs, and it's been about the top run scorers, Joy. You never know who's in front.
No, I've really enjoyed this, and one of the reasons I've enjoyed this is that we've been following Orange Caps for a long time, and there are years where Chris Gayle or Virat Kohli runs away with it. In the last 2-3 years, some players have dominated it. So I think Rahul won it last year with 670, and the next guy was Dhawan with 618. It's a pretty far margin. And then the year before that, Warner won it. What is fantastic about this? Let's take a look. Of the 5 batsmen, how many Indian batsmen out there? 4 Indian batsmen out there. Number one. Of them, only 2 play regularly for India, or 1 plays regularly for India at this point in time. KL Rahul is the only one playing T20s regularly for India. You have Shikhar Dhawan, who's just made his way back. Sanju Samson, who's played 1 match. Rituraj Gaikwad, who's just again, he's on the fringe. He got a chance in Sri Lanka. And that is great for Indian cricket, I think. Yeah, I think Shaun has a point to make.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say too, look at that table. And it's an interesting thing to keep in mind is that there's 2 of those players, for example, Rahul and Samson. Will they be around in the playoffs? That is the key to ends up winning, because Gaikwad's thinking to himself, okay, I'm only, 11 plus, so I'm 19 runs ahead of KL Rahul, and he's got another innings still to play. But Shikhar Dhawan and du Plessis will definitely be in the playoffs, and he's a long way ahead of them. So that also dictates terms as to who's going to end up on top with regards to this Orange Cap.
It certainly does. And Joy, after pointing out the Indian players there, I think one more point I'd like to make in today's game, and we've seen it in a few games in this tournament, and that's the theme you'd like for an Indian tournament. You want to see the Indian players perform, not because you want to just give them chances, because you're outperforming international players. Think of the international players on the stage today. Du Plessis, Curran, Hazelwood, David Miller, Glenn Phillips, all top impact international players. But who are the ones who emerge on top? Every Indian player from Gaikwad to Jaiswal to Dube. Only Evan Lewis was the international player who shone.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And I think that's great news for Indian cricket. It's also great news because some of these guys we always talked about in terms of potential. And I think especially I think Shivam Dube has turned the corner. And innings like this is a kind of innings that suddenly makes you feel you belong in this stage. Otherwise, he was always given a fair amount of money in the last 2 auctions, but he's never delivered. And I think suddenly he's looking at it and saying that, I belong to this stage. It'll make a difference to his career as well. One thing
I'd like to add, just in a wrap-up of this game, is also CSK bowlers. I thought they were pretty average, to be honest. And sometimes people goes, well, how how does this happen? How do they get so far off the mark? And one of the contributing factors is when you move from Sharjah to another surface. And people say, well, why? And the reason is because Sharjah is such an average wicket this time around. We saw some great ones in the years gone by. But because it's such an average wicket now, you run up and you just whack hard back of length and the ball stops, it kicks a bit, grips a little bit, and really hard for the batters to get on. Then when you get onto a quality surface, when your margin for error is so small, it's almost like you're out of practice in being able to do it. So you run up and you just think, well, I'll hit back of a length and I'll go picks you up with the pace out the ground, or I'll go a bit fuller over the top. So there's no surface to work with. And the other point is, and so that's why I think Hazelwood, for example, struggled, having played at Sharjah before. The other point by CSK is Sam Curran. It's interesting how, in many ways, he's fallen away a little bit, because at one stage of the tournament, it was almost like they were building their team around him. I mean, he was getting to bowl at all the chances or at all the important times. Batting-wise, they were sending him as a pinch hitter. They were sending him in the middle. They were sending him to take on the spinners. And now it seems like I don't think he's, at this stage, he's got a role. And I think going into the playoffs, I'm sure Bravo would probably be picked well above him, and you probably won't find his name in the squad. So that's just interesting, just from my perspective, just to wrap it up.
I think it makes sense because the bowlers have gone for a few, the surface, and as we said, Bravo, Deepak Chahar missing, so they'll want to get their act together as far as the whole unit is concerned. But it seems ages ago, after we've had the excitement of game number 2, that we haven't quite forgotten about game number 1. We did have a few minutes to sort of wrap what happened, but I think it's time to recap once again. It was Delhi versus Mumbai in the afternoon, and it was a sharp contrast to this particular game. 129 for 8 is all Mumbai got, and you think by today's evening standard that should have been knocked off in 10 overs. No, it wasn't. Delhi struggled and struggled and struggled and tiptoed over the line with a 33 of 33 from Shreyas Iyer, and that's what it took. It needed 100 type of strike rate to win that particular game. We've talked about Shreyas Iyer a lot. He's the only person we talked about when we wrapped earlier. Quick word on Mumbai. What do Mumbai get out of this particular game, and how worried should they be, Joy?
I don't think they've got much out of this game at all. I don't think they played Jayant Yadav, who was useful for them, but Jayant Yadav for Rajasthan. The problem is that Hardik is not giving them anything right now. And I thought Avesh bowled beautifully though to him. And they're fast bowlers that they came back as well as they could. Considering the total was just 130 or 129, 130 to chase, they did well. But their batsmen have simply not done enough in this tournament to give them these kind of situations. Situations like this, Mumbai will get over the line maybe 3 times out of 10. But if they're going to get into this situation match after match, it's not going to happen. This is a Mumbai team that after a long time is looking like it will not qualify. And remember, these are defending champions for the last couple of years. They've repeated as IPL champions. They're defending champions. I don't see them in the qualifiers from here.
Shaun, you've been in that dugout. You've captained this side. It's a quality franchise. How do they stand up and be counted? Even someone like a Surya Kumar has got off that dreaded telephone number, but did he do enough to say that I'm back?
Yeah, it is a situation that they find themselves in. And I think when you look at their team, I mean, there's probably 5 players there that any franchise would absolutely jump at with regard to the contributions they can make and the destructiveness they can show with the bat, or from, like, for example, a Bumrah with the ball. I mean, he can be absolutely brilliant. But the reason they were champions is because all of them were sort of at their standard or above. And for a period of time now, there's been too many individuals in that side who haven't hit what we know that we can expect from them. Rohit hasn't quite been in his firepower. There's been contributions from Quinton, but we know he can take it just to the next level. Surya Kumar hasn't been at his best, and he got a few runs this time around. Pollard has probably still been good. Pandya hasn't quite, given us what we've seen, and the start from Bolt at the up front hasn't been as good as we saw it last year. So I think it's a case in point of same individuals, same abilities, but just not reaching their standards as a team, as a combined unit. And I think they can still squeak in. I mean, as we talked about how important it is that Rajasthan have it in their control. Mumbai play Rajasthan next, so if they beat them, basically they'll knock them out. Then they can pick up some confidence from there. And all they've got to do is sneak in, and that'll be the focus. And And sometimes, you just need something to aim at. So it's not to try and get into the top 2. It's not to try and do anything. It's just qualification. Narrow it down as a team. You have a meeting. Have a meeting and to say, listen, guys, forget about what's happened so far. It's 2 games. We've got 2 games. If we can produce, if we can win, we're in the knockouts, and then we've got a chance. So let's put it all behind us. Let's not discuss the baggage too much. Come, let's forget about that and focus on these 2 games at hand.
Well, that's the double-header from Saturday, but the cricket continues, the juggernaut continues, the caravan continues, and despite my promising that I was going to walk out of the show if Rituraj Gaikwad is man of the match, I've decided to stay on and do my job. But yeah, that's to confirm to all of you, it is Gaikwad man of the match. Played outstandingly well, but I'm one of those who believes that the man of the match should come from the winning side. But we should leave it at that and not discuss it any further and say, well played, Gaikwad. Let's move on to the first of the 2 games. Again, very critical. The men from Bangalore taking on Punjab in match number 48 from Sharjah. That's going to be critical. That's the pitch that they've tried to fix, hasn't quite got fixed yet, Joy. So for a side that likes to maybe put big totals on the board and assert themselves, it may not be that easy a task for them to say, okay, this is what we need to do to win and win well. Bangalore.
I agree with you. This is not the kind of surface that Bangalore ever looks at and is happy about, not the kind of free-stroking batsmen they have. But they have one plus point out here. They've seen Chennai stumble. And that means that suddenly their opportunities for sneaking into the top 2 have increased. So they've just seen a little window of opportunity. It's still Delhi's and Chennai's to lose. But I think Bangalore is seeing it and say, if we win our 2, maybe one of those guys will stumble and we have a chance. So I think that's one thing that will really power them, because every one of the teams who've qualified wants to be among the top 2. The second thing I think is that I think they're finally getting that side, that playing that Maxwell between Kohli and De Villiers is working for them. I think Shahbaz Ahmed is giving them something. So if Shahbaz Ahmed now has proven to be that player that they need out there, then I think their team is looking much, much better. Because, the balance of this side, I really enjoy it. George Garton didn't give them much in the first match, but I think he's a better bowler than he's given. This is a good team. This is a more balanced team than they've played in the past.
Shaun, I'm going to come to you just about that spot since Joy has already mentioned it. George Garton was good, but if you're coming to a Sharjah type surface, do you then say Wanindu Hasaranga?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think you got to look at the surface and say to yourself, okay, who could be a match winner for us? It's one thing just looking for a little contribution, but who could be a match winner? And for me, it's a no-brainer. When it comes to what we've seen from that pitch so far, I think they've given themselves a little bit more balance with Bharat. I think that was been a good inclusion for them. So it wouldn't even take a discussion with me. I know there's probably 3 or 4 of them have to make the call, but you've definitely got my vote.
Fair enough. And the other thing, I mean, like we saw with Suresh Raina today, who's not been informed. They tried maybe number 3. AB de Villiers, it's working well. Maxwell's working well. They figured on Srikar Bharat is your number 3. But is there a case for AB de Villiers getting a few more balls if they can give it to him?
Well, I'm not sure this is the kind of surface that you try that kind of stuff on. A, that. B is that I think you pack your batting as much as possible, hope that the guys up front get runs for you, because the more the time will... The only point in favor of that is the fact that, I'd still say Maxwell will go ahead of him because he's the man. He's really the man in form more than any of the others. But the only other reason for playing AB de Villiers up front is because this surface, you want to play your better batsmen when the ball is still hard. And, this is going to deteriorate very fast. But this is a far more settled because of that Shahbaz Ahmed and the Dan Christian move. Again, Dan Christian will bowl well on this surface as well. Because of these 2 moves, I think they've extended, because they're both all-rounders, I think they've extended in both directions. They can now afford to play Hasaranga because Dan Christian will bowl just as well or badly as somebody else who's a specialist bowler in this pitch. And I think you've got a little bit more, Virat will have a little bit more to play with. So I think their team is set. Hasaranga for Garton, perhaps. Otherwise, I don't see it being changed.
Shaun, you happy with the rest of the side as they are, despite the change in surface? Don't tinker with the batting order. Just keep pretty much horses for courses, which is your Hasaranga.
Yeah, I like the top 5. Even with the Villiers coming there, I think it's really good. And often on this kind of surface, it's be those 5 that will dictate terms. If you're starting to rely on someone little bit lower than that, I don't think it's going to do. And Hasaranga gives you a fantastic option with the ball, doesn't he? I mean, he's a match winner, as I said. It's a no-brainer for me. I think Punjab do come into this game maybe with a slight advantage from having played. I think their last game was on at Sharjah, wasn't it? And they defended that total. So I think having had a bit more cricket on that surface, they do come in with a slight advantage. But obviously a lot of pressure on their shoulders. If Bangalore lose it, it's not the end of the world. I mean, they want to win it and they want to try and get in the top 2. But if Punjab lose it, it's basically the end of their tournament. So I think that's the only thing playing in there against them.
Well, critical for them. That's what Rajasthan needed. That's what Rajasthan did. Though Punjab's last game was in Dubai. But having said that, one more, we've been talking about all these PTP and PPT 11s. There's one more 11 that's starting to develop, and that's where have you been all this time 11? And we saw Shivam Dube. We need to give it a good name. We'll think of a good name for it. But Shivam Dube is one of them who's got into it. Shah Rukh Khan definitely gets into that 11. And teams are starting to realize that, hello, we've actually got several people in the squad. Let's get them in there. So let's put in the Punjab squad. Shah Rukh Khan definitely doesn't go anywhere for now. Any other changes, Shaun, do you see from their last performance? Nathan Ellis, does he stay in there?
Yeah, I think he did a good job the little time that I played there. Didn't he bowled a good last over? So I don't know. Maybe they'll consider going him. Jordan with his experience. I like them bringing Bishnu back in. I think that was a big call. Rashid Khan. Not Rashid Khan. Adil Rashid, what am I saying? Maybe that might be the option. It depends on what that surface looks like. As much as we're talking about Hasaranga as a match-winning option, you would think if the surface is going to turn that Adil Rashid could be that option that they maybe turn to in place of Ellis. But it's at this stage you don't even tinkering too much. I suppose it's ironic saying that after you've got Rajasthan who've won with 5 changes, but I think the teams who've got sort of a bit of balance to try and not mess around with that is important.
Yeah, I mean, would other teams, Joy, look at that exactly as Shaun said? Would they look at Rajasthan and say, okay, if they can do it, should we now start looking at our bench, the 5 guys who sat at the hotel because you can only take X number of players to the ground? Should we try and see who's in a hotel and can actually play?
I think Punjab, by winning last time, they've proven that they've got some things right. 2 changes I'd look at. One is definitely Chris Jordan, or I don't mind Adil Rashid also in replacing Nathan Ellis. Definitely, Sharjah is not the kind of ground that Nathan Ellis, and Nathan Ellis would have never seen a ground like Sharjah really too much at all. I'd definitely go with someone like Jordan and Ellis. The other change I'd look at is turning around and saying, Deepak Hooda, if he's not giving me that much, and he's not been giving them that much, can I go and get Harpreet Brar? Because Harpreet Brar gives you a little bit more with the ball, I believe, than Deepak Hooda does. And he can bat a bit as well. He can whack it. I think he's if you see what's been happening in this tournament, gutsy players have been given their place. They've gone for it. They're not scared. They're not going to back down. I like Harpreet Brar and what he brings to this team. I'd like to see Harpreet Brar instead of Deepak Hooda there.
Well, he has been man of the match, Harpreet Brar. So let's not ignore him. Quick one on the spot. One from each of you. Player to watch out for in that Bangalore versus Punjab game. Shaun, one for you.
I'm going to go from left, right, any field you want to. I think it's De Villiers' time. I think he hasn't produced anything really since he's come back, and I think he'll be itching. Those class of players sit in the hotel room and in the dressing room thinking, come on, it's my time. I've got to actually put on a bit of a show here, and he's overdue. So I reckon that's the one to watch out tomorrow. The other ones have all got going. Maxwell's playing well. I think De Villiers is about around the corner with his time to shine.
Joy?
I'm going to go with KL Rahul. I'm just going to go with KL Rahul. At some point in time, he's got to show us exactly how class a player he is. And he's shown us glimpses, but he's looked as if he's weighed down by responsibility. I want to see a free scoring Rahul. And let's see. I hope he can hit this time.
Well, in the evening, we are finally going to have a game featuring a team who have no possibility of going any further in the tournament. What that will mean for them is a huge ask. But let's start with the team who are still very much in it, and that's Kolkata. Because they had to make a hard choice. They've got Andre Russell injured. Lockie Ferguson perhaps still not yet fit enough to come back, which means they've had to make a hard call with someone like a Tim Seifert getting in there. Was that the call? We are still crying out for Shakib Al Hasan, Joy. Are you seeing Shakib back?
It's a complete no-brainer for me. It has to be Shakib, not just because he's a better batsman or a worse batsman than Tim Seifert, but they need those 4 overs. If you see what happened to Venkatesh Iyer this time, and it was no fault of his at all. He's a young man who's playing very bravely. He's great as an option to give you a couple of overs, and if he goes on well, you give him you give him one more, and you see where it goes. But having an international star like Shakib Al Hasan out there, of course, your other option is for Morgan to drop himself out and just play Shakib for Morgan and then finds one other replacement. That can also work for them. But I don't think they'll do that at this stage in the tournament, dropping their captain. But I think Shakib has to walk into that team, if not for anything else, to give them that proper 5th bowler. And if Shakib comes in, he's not your 5th bowler, he's your 2nd or 3rd bowler. I mean, Shakib, Sunil Narayan and Varun Chakravarti together on that surface is 12 hours of hell for any batsman.
But basically, Shaun, you don't have to be a cricket aficionado or a proper pundit to say that 5 bowlers is a bare minimum. We often talk about who has a 6th and a 7th and gives you an advantage. They didn't even have 5 the last time around. I'm sure McCullum and company will be sitting there saying, listen, that's the first thing we need to fix.
Yeah, it's a tough sell for me. In a coaching role, if I was in that department, particularly having been a bowler and knowing that on certain days you feel like you're going the distance, and it's nice to just have that 6th option. If you've got guys who are 100% bankers, and sometimes you'll get these T20 teams around the world where they've got 5 guys, they know their role, they can stick to them, and they're basically guaranteed that they're going to be able to deliver their 4 overs. Then maybe you can risk it. But going in with 4.5 and hoping that it all goes according to plan is very risky business. So I was always a person who believed in giving people responsibility, and if 6 batters can't do it, then
I know, Joe, the other day we did sort of have a discussion on Morgan, but do you realistically think is it a non-cricketing reason why Owen Morgan can't possibly ask himself to sit out?
I think there are too many complications, because I think there are a lot of complications that arise out of it given the circumstances, because he's really a kind of player. It's just before a big auction. You're suddenly dropping him, you're telling him that perhaps you're not available. Then I think the only reason you can do it is if you have decided that, okay, next year onwards, we're going to go in a fresh new direction. This is not it. And say, you know what, we've already reached here. Even if you did that, you can do it only really if you think you have no chance of qualifying. So if they lose this next match, because whatever is happening right on Morgan's watch, whether you like it or not, they're 5 and 7 under him. They've made this recovery in the Gulf under him. So, whatever his personal form has been. So you can't walk away from that unless they lose another one, they can't qualify, and then they put in a new captain. They say, okay, let's finish the season. Let's look in a fresh new direction.
Well, as far as Hyderabad are concerned, they've given it their best. They had a mathematical chance till their last game, but once that was gone, it's goodbye. Now, are we going to see everybody who hasn't played a game get a game with a few key players still very much in the mix? Someone like a Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, eyes on the national side. He'll want to get in there, but I'm thinking of Mujibur Rahman, I'm thinking Nabi, any of the guys who haven't really got a go. Do you now get Manish Pandey back, get him to try and get some runs, Joy?
I really don't see Manish Pandey and David Warner coming back, because I don't think the franchise is looking at them as long-term prospects for them anymore. I think they've decided to part ways in that. Definitely, they would be looking at somebody like a Nabi. I think Mujib would also, they'll be looking at Mujib. The only thing that they'll be looking at is saying, we still want to be competitive. They owe it to their fans, to everyone, to put a competitive side up. So they're not just going to pack it for the sake of packing it. I think they'll put up whatever they can. And I see that they've got a little bit of success with what they did last time, the last match. And I think they'll just try and play on that success and try and say that, okay, these are the 2-3 players we've identified. They're giving us something. Let's try and follow them. Let's try and give them more opportunities.
It can't be easy, Shaun, when you're eliminated. Of course, you talk about playing for pride, but in the context of the fact that some players may not be in your plans for next season, you've got to sort of juggle that with the fact that you still need to play as a professional unit.
Yeah, I think you owe it to the tournament, you owe it to the rest of the teams, you owe it to everyone trying to qualify to try and put out your best team it's a difficult one from a coaching perspective, because you do spend a lot of these weeks getting and forming a relationship with young individuals in the team and different players that tend to sit on the bench, and you sort of look across and they're almost looking at you with those puppy dog eyes like, please coach, give me a chance. We're out of the tournament. Any chance I can just get a game? So it is such a difficult situation that they find themselves in. But I think they still do owe it to everyone involved to try and go with the strongest team. Tinker maybe one or two people that you can maybe give a chance and that you actually probably wanted to see anyway in the tournament, rather than just saying, here's a cap, go out there and see what you can do. So yeah, it's not a nice situation to be in, but it also is important that those players try and finish with a bit of self-pride.
Yeah, I think that's the key that Shaun and you both said, Joy. It's about picking the players who you think would be able to deliver for you. We've talked about Mujib in the past as a replacement, not just to fill a gap. We've talked about Nabi. He's been there. He's done that for the franchise before. But yet, for someone like a Rashid Khan, impact player, he's never someone who'll want to sit. So he'll be sort of standing out there, probably go out there tonight and be standing there in the middle going, I'm playing already. He's that kind of character.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's the point, that you don't just owe it to the players. You owe it to your fans. You owe it to your franchise to say that we're going to put up a good show. You can't and the cap for your team cannot be cheap. It must have value. Playing for that franchise can't be easy just because you're not winning. Then anyone can walk in. So that pride must remain. And that's why whoever will play will be a player who they think is capable of really contributing to that first 11. They're not just going to give away that cap randomly. And they won't.
Talking of caps, interesting tweet, Joy, which I responded to. This is the actual matchup. They talk about the orange and the purple. It's orange playing purple tomorrow in the night game. And at one point in time, one was not orange, one was not purple. So maybe what's the solution? I actually tweeted out green and brown, and I was promptly told, no, 2 new franchises coming. Don't take a chance. White is the best color. White and black maybe.
But white is very boring for T20 matches. White is not the color for T20. But yeah, you could go silver or try some sort of variety of that. I don't know, but not white.
Or maybe go the way of Formula One and try and do maybe a checkered cap and a striped cap.
Gautam, I mean, I know you'd love stuff like that. I know you'd like to show them your entire wardrobe, the kind of socks you wear, the kind of ties you wear, for example. Please don't advise them on this issue. Let them choose their own colors. Please, Gautam. Please.
I guess that's one job I'm not getting. Fair enough. I'll stick to this. Okay, just to finish, since we did it for the first game, Shaun, one player to watch out for from tomorrow's game. Orange against purple.
Sure. Well, I'm trying to think. It's all going to be down to who they pick, isn't it?
Exactly.
But I think someone probably to watch out, Jason Roy. I think he's still got a point to prove. He should definitely be playing. He played well in the first game, didn't get any in the second. And, I think it's another opportunity for him just to show people what he's capable of. And he sat on the bench for a long time. So I think he'll be still quietly determined to get them off to a fast start. And in his first innings that he played was brilliant. So I think I'll watch out for him.
Joy?
It's difficult to look beyond. This is the year for Venkatesh Iyer. It's difficult to look beyond him. So, yeah, I think I'll just say that, I just want to see how it keeps going. So far, every time you think that, he's going to go off, he's going to cool off, he's just kept playing. And I'm just agog to see whether he can keep this form up, red hot form.
Well, with a lot of new players expected tomorrow night, I can tell you've got to be watching us very carefully, because well before you make your My 11 Circle teams, you need to make sure you look for our My 11 Circle Smart Picks. Of course, if you haven't got it, download the app, and it's very simple. Once you download the app, the instructions are pretty simple. Create your own team, pick the match, of course. First pick the afternoon game, then pick the night game. 1 crore first prize is your incentive. That is a big enough incentive to get playing every single game. Now, we've waited long and hard for our Joy Factor question. It was asked a long, long time ago. Actually 2 minutes to midnight, so it was still today. Go ahead and tell us the question and the answer.
Yeah, the question, of course, is in what way are the first test of the Ashes in 1979 and the 11th match of this league in 2010 connected? And it had to do with something 2 individual players did. Of course, the players in question were Dennis Tilley and Matthew Hayden. And what they did was One of them played with different bats. One of them played with an aluminium bat and hit 93 with the mongoose bat in 2010. And then, of course, apparently Dhoni begged him, please don't use this anymore. You're going to ruin the game of cricket. But he played with that bat and he played very well, actually. So 2 unusual bats being used on the cricket field. That's what connects it.
And let's find out who it is who spotted this first and foremost. And, ooh, that's nice. Glenn Diabro. Glenn Diabro. That is a name we're hearing for the first time. We'd love to know more about you. Hashtag Cricbuzz Live. You've given us the answer. Maybe reply to us and tell us a little bit more about you, where you're from, because you're up against some very, very serious quizzers. But that was some trivia, Joy. You're back in form on a day when it took a huge run chase. Your questions are well back in form. Shaun Pollock, well done for answering that as well.
Yeah, I think what we need to get on those answers, though, also when we identify the individuals, is how long it took them to get the answer. So once the question goes out, within 30 seconds, normally we get the answers. So I took a little bit longer, but I was just so proud of myself. I think it's actually the first Joy question that I've got right, that when I looked at it first, I thought I've got no chance. But once the few tips came through, good for me. I finally got one right. Better than our predictions, let's put it that way. Gautam's gone.
Gautam, we've lost you again. Every time you come to this situation, I think you're so happy that you've answered these questions that he's gone off it again. But we'll have him back. I'm sure we'll have him back in a few seconds. But what a day of cricket, Shaun. I mean, amazing day of cricket. I mean, that second match was absolutely unbelievable. And let's see where it goes in this last. The next day is again a double header. Let's see where it goes this time.
I can tell you I was just keeping my promise. This was the Rituraj Gaikwad effect. Even though I decided not to physically get up and walk away, I think technology decided that since I promised that, they might as well toss me out of the show for a few minutes, for a token few seconds, just in protest. But never mind, we'll still say he's got to be the man of the day, even if not the man of the match in our eyes. What a performance, what an innings, and certainly something that we're going to remember for a long, long time, and Indian cricket certainly will. That's as far as the show is concerned. What a day it's been. We've just ticked past midnight. So later today, we're going to have 2 matches coming for you. We've already told you what they are. Shaun Pollock, thank you very much. Joy Bhattacharya, thank you. And for all of you joining us and being part of this family, just in case you want to be a further part of the family, subscribe to Cricbuzz Plus. There's lots more that you're going to enjoy. But from all of us on Cricbuzz Live, in association with our fantasy partner, My 11 Circle, it's time to say good night.